The topic discussed today, as well as others, can be found in this week's episode of Fringe, out now on Amazon and other retailers. Here we sink our teeth into one of horror's leading monsters and get a taste of an all-American vampire. Another round of coughing shakes your body. You feel as if the meat of your ribs are trying to pull away from the bone. As the dark spots clear from your eyes and your breathing comes back, you notice something at the edge of your bed. The curtains are drawn, but if you squint, the dark shape takes on the form of a man. Or is it a woman? As soon as you lean up to see better, it pounces. The thing is all teeth and claws. You feel it burning on your neck, in your chest. As you scream, the door is flung open, and your mother rushes in to find you alone on your bed. She places a cool cloth on your fevered head as your eyes scan the room. It had been that new doctor, hadn't it? Or maybe that poor girl the town buried not a day ago. A wave of dizziness spins through your thoughts around and around. There had been someone, hadn't there? An awful spasm grips your lungs and your chest heaves. The fit this time is worse than it has ever been, and blood comes away when you wipe your mouth. You are one of thousands dying from consumption in early America. People have long been fascinated with vampires. In the media, they have been used to convey everything from the temptation of drugs to the personification of the AIDS epidemic. Stories about the undead have provided memorable characters such as Anne Rice's seductive Lestat and Stephenie Meyer's sparkling Edward. Vampire panic today would describe a mass of screaming fans in a rush to buy whatever ticket they needed for the latest Hollywood heartthrob in pale makeup. In the past, however, a vampire wasn't something to celebrate. It meant death. Throughout Europe, the fear of vampires came from several mythological sources. The Romanian Strigoi, a vengeful spirit that rose from the grave in the body of a recently deceased family member, is one. Another would be the Greek myth of the Varkolakis, undead who crave the blood and organs of the living. There are dozens more from different legends spanning across countries. What these stories resulted in were some truly horrific practices. Bodies of suspected vampires were driven through with long iron spikes. Some recently departed were dug up and dismembered, others buried face down, so when they tried to rise, they would dig to hell instead. While these superstitions may seem like old world scares, America had its own share of vampiric terror. In 1788, the good people of Dillsboro in North Carolina welcomed their new doctor to town. Dr. Alford, along with his wife and young son, moved into a large house and began to see patients. As was customary at the time, the doctor received the sick in his home, and even had an apothecary, which allowed him to create and give medicine immediately, instead of having to wait for orders to be filled a town away. This convenience made him quite popular, and not long after his arrival, business was booming. Then 2 people died under his care. It wasn't their death that was suspicious. Life was hard and short in those days of early medicine. It was more what he said they died from. The 2 men had gone to see Dr. Alfred for gout. Gout is an inflammatory disease that causes burning and swelling in the joints due to a buildup of uric acid crystals. It is not fatal, and the 2 men were in good health otherwise. This began the rumors that something wasn't right with the good doctor. Later that same year, a mother in the town walked into her daughter's room to find a black shape hovered over the child. The mother ran to the little girl's bedside only to find her dead and the shape gone. 2 small holes on the girl's neck were her only injuries. This would be the beginning of the blood frenzy. A few nights later, an entire family was found dead in their home. All were drained of blood with twin bite marks on their necks. A young boy, the sole survivor, could only repeat that something had attacked his family. Nothing and no one was found at the scene. Rumors of large animal sightings started to come in from the countryside. A giant wolf was spotted by a farm on the outskirts. One man even claimed to see an unusually large bat glide over his field. All went quiet for around a year in the little town of Dillsboro. Gradually, people began to lose interest in the gossip and rumors that their handsome doctor was a vampire. Then a couple, newlyweds, were found dead in their home by a local man. He also saw a black shape flee the scene and head to the direction of Dr. Alford's home. That night, a posse of men confronted the doctor. They surrounded the house and demanded that Dr. Alford come out and allow them to search the property. Needless to say, he did not agree to the angry mob's terms. He was forced out and tied to a tree while the men investigated his home. The downstairs rooms were used as his clinic, and the upstairs was the living area. Some accounts report that the rooms were bedless, or that the beds looked unused. A trapdoor was found in the cellar that led deeper into the house, into an earthen chamber that contained 3 coffins. Miss Alford was drugged from one of these coffins and hung next to her husband at sunup. Their bodies were then placed back into the home, and the whole place was burned to ash. No one ever saw their son, and to this day, legends persist in Dillsboro about what could have happened to him. Years later, in 1883, vampire hysteria would once again grip a small town by its throat. The people of Exeter, Rhode Island began to waste away and die. One family was hit particularly hard by the mysterious illness, the Browns. George Brown watched as it took his wife, Mary, along with his oldest daughter, Mary Olive. The Brown women all had the same symptoms. First would come an awful cough, then bloody phlegm. Soon their bodies would show dramatic weight loss, and hellish fevers would keep them up all night. Thin and weak, they died in a pool of their own sweat. While tragic, it wasn't until the death of his remaining daughter, Mercy Brown, that George and the people of Exeter began to think that something evil was going on. Now it is important to note here that the symptoms shown by the Browns were textbook signs of consumption, or what we now call tuberculosis. This was not an unknown disease at the time. Doctors were well aware of it and how deadly it was at this point in American history. The horrors of the disease would go on to be characterized by Edgar Allan Poe in his short story The Mask of the Red Death. The town doctor advised George it had been consumption that had taken his wife and daughters, but George wasn't quick to believe that. See, he only had one child remaining, his son Edwin. The people of Exeter held on to the vampire superstitions, and they were convinced that one of George's family had become an undead. It wasn't a disease that would come for Edwin. It would be one of his dearly departed sisters, or his own mother. So George agreed to allow the town elders to exhume the bodies of his family. The first corpse removed from Exeter's Chestnut Hill Cemetery had been that of his wife. Her body was desiccated, practically mummified. The body of Mary Olive was taken out next. She showed obvious signs of decay. It was when they pulled Mercy Brown from her grave that the town felt shock. Mercy's body was pristine, pale to be sure, but she looked only asleep, not long dead. They cut her body open and found congealed blood still in her heart. This was all the proof the town needed. They took his daughter's heart and burned it to ash. George then ate the ashes, along with Edwin. They left, thinking the cycle of death would finally end. Edwin died of consumption just a few months later. Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed my work and want to show some support, I deeply appreciate it. My books can be found on Amazon. I do have a Patreon as well as a Ko-Fi at Ari Brewster. You can find me in all the usual places. Links below. Make sure to like and subscribe. I'm out. I'm so broke. Yeah, I'm so broke. This dollar won't last. I'm in dire need of cash 'cause I'm so broke. I'm so broke. Yeah, I'm so broke. No food to eat. I'll sell pictures of my feet 'cause I'm so broke.